Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to give it just a couple minutes while everybody logs on, gets settled in. If you get a chance in the chat, let us know what city you're in, or calling from, or viewing us from tonight, so we can get an idea if it's only Inland Empire or if we've got people from outside our region. So thanks, Victorville, Hamnezer, Beaumont. I love seeing all these names. Thanks for joining us. Glenwood, Menifee, San Diego, Rupa Valley, Corona. See some familiar names. We'll give it just like Elsinore. Hi, Armand. Hi, Denise. Hi. Oh my gosh, great people. Love seeing all these names. So thanks for joining us. All right, I think we're going to start down with the participants, and we have a lot to cover tonight. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I know we're going to have more people join us. So welcome, everybody. My name is Beth Bird. I'm the Executive Director for the Autism Society here in the Inland Empire. And most importantly, I'm a proud parent of 2 young men, one of whom has autism. This webinar tonight was courtesy of Candy Sissel and our support group of parents of adults. This was something to see a hot request from that parent support group, and we were fortunate to get some wonderful speakers tonight. And we are happy to be able to record this as well. We are going to have a hard stop tonight at 7:30. We are thankful to our ASL interpreter, Martin Yost, and our Spanish interpreter, Gilbert Villalobos. Did I say that right?
Very well.
Getting better. So I'm going to do some quick housekeeping. I think everybody knows these, but we cannot see you, we cannot hear you. We are on a webinar, we are recording. If you have anything you want to ask, please put it in the chat or the Q&A. We're going to be monitoring that during the presentations, and I'll ask the speakers once we get on. Gilbert, could you let everybody know about the interpretation?
Sure. Si usted necesita interpretación al español, al pie de su pantalla usted debería ver un globo, como un mundo. Presiónele ahí y luego le da la opción de qué idioma quiere usted escuchar el programa. Entonces escoge el español y un servidor también se va a pasar al español y se va a escuchar solamente en español. En el lado de inglés no van a poder verle, no van a poder escucharle. Usted solo va a poder ver y escuchar el español.
Thank you, Gilbert. And I'm going to go ahead and put you on. So for everybody else, I'm going to ask under the globe that Gilbert was talking about, it says interpretation. If you click on the English or the Spanish, depending on what channel, that way if we have any Spanish speakers who ask questions, if you're on the English channel, you'll be able to hear what they're saying. So it's important to go down to the interpretation and click English, so that way you can hear any questions from that. I'm going to go ahead and start introducing our first speaker, which is going to be Shella Dumong from Chance Housing. We also have Amanda McGuire from Inland Regional Center. And we have, I'm going to mess up your name, Yvonne. I'm going to apologize now. Yvonne McCuston Tucker, how did I do?
You did excellent. Thank you.
Did I get it wrong?
No, you got it right.
That's pretty good. And we also have Vicki Smith, both from the California Department of Developmental Services, joining us tonight. So this is great, lots of great information. So again, we're recording it. I will send you out back the PowerPoints tomorrow when you have them. And then if you need to go and listen to the presentation, we'll send that out as well. So with that, Ms. Shella, I am going to turn it over to you. If we have any deaf participants, please make sure you pin the sign language interpreter, and you're able to pin multiple people. So if you want to pin our speaker as well, you're able to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shella, and I'll go dark. If you need anything, I'll be here. But Ms. Shella, take it away.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Shella Dumong. And I guess first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for being here. And I'm so pleased that the issue of community-based, affordable, and accessible housing and housing access services has come to the risen to the surface of importance for your group. I am the mom to two sons, Nicholas and Simone. And Simone is a regional center client. He has Down syndrome. He's also a trans male. So if you hear me switch back and forth the genders of he, she, I do that occasionally, especially if I'm just not thinking, it slips out. So I don't want to confuse you, but that's the case. So Simone is now 32 years old and lives in an apartment in our home community of Santa Barbara. He has a 2-bedroom Section 8 voucher. He receives supported living services, and he has a live-in caregiver. I'm the executive director of Chance Housing, which is the Coalition for Housing Accessibility, Needs, Choices, and Equality, a very long name, shortened to Chance. And we provide person-centered housing access services to people who receive regional center services, including those on the spectrum and all of the other developmental disabilities as well. I've been a housing advocate for over 23 years. I'm on the state's Developmental Services Task Force, and I'm also on the state's Aging and Disability Community Living Advisory Committee, which is another mouthful, but it's the Olmsted Committee, essentially. I got involved in housing services in about 1999 when my son graduated, my son Nicholas graduated from high school, and it left Simone sort of at home. And I began to wonder what was going to happen with adult services for Simone, similar to Nicholas, you know, when Simone graduates high school. I contacted my regional center and I spoke with Simone's case manager about, like, you know, what are the things that I could expect. She told me that mostly people who have Down syndrome, when they reach adult age, they go into group homes or other kind of licensed settings, sometimes skilled nursing facilities or intermediate care facilities, sometimes developmental centers. And I wasn't really familiar with any of those. So I made a couple of visits. I went to a couple of group homes in my area. I visited a couple of developmental centers. I went to a local ICF, intermediate care facility, and really the experience kind of shook me to my core. There was no instance sort of in the regular housing that was available in my community at that time did it seem like it would be suitable for my then daughter Simone in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, we had spent all of this time fighting like hell to get Simone mainstream in school, to receive, you know, participate in all of the community programs, to get into the local daycare, to, you know, be receiving, you know, everything from infant stimulation to speech therapy, with the promise that I believed, which was when Simone became an adult, there would be something in the community that was, you know, rose to the occasion of a meaningful life for her, him. Sorry. And that was the promise of the Lanterman Act, that, you know, the state made a commitment to people with developmental disabilities to receive services in the community and to live in the community. And in my community, which is an expensive housing market, there really wasn't anything. So I went to my regional center board meeting and I kind of explained the situation of what I saw, what I experienced, what I was hoping for. And as it turned out at that time, There was a grassroots kind of a group forming. There was a bunch of us family members who had loved ones who were older than my Simone, who was only 8 years old at the time, who were sort of questioning the same thing. They wanted to receive supported living services, but they couldn't do so because the adults still lived at home with the family members. And, housing was separate from the services, and how was that all going to work? So, I got together with this group and we sort of set out to figure out how is it that people can afford to live in community when they only receive Social Security. And that is kind of the story. I think what I need to do, which I forgot to do, is I need to upload my PowerPoint presentation because I've got more for you. So I'm going to attempt a screen sharing at the moment, and we'll see if I can get there. There we go. And so Chance was started. We started with the assistance of not only our regional center and community members, but also with the assistance of Department of Developmental Services. So hang on one quick second. Let me see if I can't switch pages here. Let me see. I am having technical difficulties. My friends, I can't seem to move.
Put your cursor, put the cursor on the PowerPoint. There you go. And now hit the arrow.
Okay, here we go. Thank you.
There
There we go. So I've introduced myself. I've told you a little bit about how Chance started. And the reason that we started, because there wasn't any community-based, affordable, and accessible housing in Santa Barbara, and how were people going to access supported living services without housing? So our regional center was a great support, but the department, and I'm so glad that Yvonne McQuistion-Tucker is on the presentation tonight, because she really was a main contact for me at the Department of Developmental Services when we were trying to figure out how our grassroots organization was kind of going to get some funding to be able to study the problem of accessing rent subsidies. And so the department, gave us a grant to start up our agency, and the rest is history. We've spent 23 years now really working and developing a blueprint for how it is that housing access services and housing navigation services are delivered to make sure that people have rent subsidies and can live in the community. Okay, there we go. So how it works with our agency is it starts with a referral, right? And the referral can come from any source. Primarily, it comes from a regional center. At our regional center, when an adult or a family, right, is having an IPP meeting and a housing need emerges as something that is happening in their life. Either they need to move, or they're having trouble finding a place, or they've got a rent increase, or they're potentially facing homelessness, or any of this kind of thing. It generates a referral to our agency. We also receive referrals from our housing authorities. I'm going to try this laser pointer here. We receive from other families that we've provided service to, people doing online searches, the regional centers, the housing authorities, service provider agencies. We don't provide residential services. We only provide housing assistance. So we work with all of the different service provider agencies, independent living agencies, supported living agencies, and other agencies, and the schools, in helping people figure out their a plan to get them into the housing that they want, the life that they want. Then we do an intake process. So what we do is we schedule time for a household or an individual to come on into our office and go through a sort of a process of discovery, where we find out about the individual. It's all very person-centered. Every household is different. The culture is different. The money is different. The neighborhood where they want to be is different. So we just go and collect all of that data, and we discover the needs and the barriers and, you know, what's their money situation and how are they going to budget for this. And we also do a housing needs assessment that documents each household's math, which is incredibly important. Rent in my community is this much. This is my income. This is what I can afford. How do we, what is the math? What do we need to come up with? We also do an initial sort of documentation of activities of daily living so that we can get an idea of how people are operating in community and where they need support, like what's working for them and not. If it's someone who's facing an eviction, what is it that happened in that situation that resulted in the eviction? Was it a behavioral thing? Okay, well, if we go into housing, what is it about their services that needs to change in order to make them stable in the next sort of evolution of their housing? Or for people who are hoping to move out the first time, you know, they may not have even had a supportive living assessment at this point in time, right? So we just kind of gather some information about where they need help so that we know, is there going to be a living caregiver involved? Does this person want to be alone? Is it a situation where we're housing a family? Then, based on all of that information gathering, which can take a while, depending upon, you know, it's at least a several-hour process. And if people can't have the ability to take care of all of it in one sitting, you know, oftentimes we'll do this intake information gathering process over several days or even weeks. Then we provide, when we come up with a person-centered housing access plan, to synthesize all of this information along with what resources exist in our community. Where's the affordable housing units? Is there a list open to apply? What about a particular development? What's happening with the service provider? Did you document this in the IPP? What's happening medically? All that kind of stuff. Synthesize it and come up with a plan. It's a step-by-step housing access plan. And then we provide the case management to help implement it. And implementing a housing plan is different for everybody because their situation is different. It could be, and usually is, applying for rent subsidies. It could be that it includes doing things like searching for suitable rentals until such time as the subsidy comes through. Assisting with applications for people who, you know, don't read, or you know, the application is not in their language of choice. Or, you know, a lot of households, especially those who receive benefits such as Social Security, SSI, SSP, have a limitation on the amount of assets that they can have. And of course, in moving, you need to come up with first and last, or first and security, or something of that nature. And that amount usually exceeds the amount that a person can possess and not get dinged on their benefits. So we also apply for grants and do other stuff and assist with security deposits. A lot of people need that. Even if they're moving and they have a security deposit on record somewhere, the landlord doesn't have to return it until after they're already in another place. So there's like this gap where we provide some funding in that gap too. We also, when people do get a voucher and have their housing authority meeting and need to do all the documentation and follow all the rules and that, we help with that. We have a incredibly tight relationship with both of the housing authorities that serve the county of Santa Barbara. And, you know, we have an excellent relationship with them, and they know if there are clients that we do a lot of the work here in the office because it's so specific and so detailed and needs to follow certain kind of federal regulations that we know exactly what to do. And it's just like, if we want to be efficient about the whole thing and assure success, we often handle that from beginning to end. including the lease up at a new apartment, landlord liaison kinds of services. And then for those obstacles and barriers that had been identified before in the person-centered housing access plan, we help overcome those barriers. And sometimes it involves advocating, with their regional center or other, departments, entities, IHSS, Social Security, whatever the deal is. Okay. So the math. Is, let me get rid of that right there. So the math is that housing is considered affordable. And this is according to the federal government. Housing is considered affordable when a person or family spends about 30% of their monthly income on their housing cost. So in simple terms, in using someone who's on Social Security, let's say that the income for this individual is $1,000 a month. 30% is their affordability. So we do the math, we multiply it out, and an affordable rent for that person is $300. And this is all throughout the state of California. This basic fact for people who receive SSI, SSP, and other, Social Security benefits, this formula applies. If you are a household and your monthly household income is $2,000, right? Then you do the math and your affordable rent would be $600. If you're a family and your monthly income is $5,000 a month, this same calculation applies. And then you will be able to down here tell what is affordable rent to you. For adults with developmental disabilities living on Social Security, there is no community within the Inland Empire or even the state of California where the rent for a studio or one-bedroom apartment is considered affordable to people with developmental disabilities receiving Social Security as their sole source of income, not a single community. And so here you can see we have the Inland Empire. The average rent is, the average one-bedroom rent is $1,442. And I put my community down as comparison, Santa Barbara, where the average rent for a one-bedroom is $2,372. And you can see there's no way on earth that $300 is going to pay $1,442 or $2,372. So how is it then that people overcome the math? First, you got to find the gap. Here you can see the average monthly rent less the tenant's affordable share shows you what your rent gap is. In the Inland Empire, the rent gap is $1,142. And in Santa Barbara, it's about $1,000 more, which is $2,072. How is it then that people with developmental disabilities can live, work, receive services, and recreate independently in their home communities when they cannot afford the average rent? And how does the rent gap get paid? Well, the things that I see when people come into my office are often these down below. Mom and dad can help pay the rent, but this then becomes a problem with Social Security that are, and other means tested resources when parents are giving money under the table, essentially, right? A person with developmental disabilities can live with their parents or other family member for their remaining lifespan, but then they're prohibited from receiving supported living services. And I think that and maybe Yvonne can let us know if this is true or not, but I think that it's around 80% of adults with developmental disabilities in the state of California live with aging caregivers. And this is one of the reasons that the early planning for a rent subsidy was not done. And or other reasons, I guess. But currently, a huge population of adults with developmental disabilities live with aging caregivers. We also see a situation in which people live in shared housing, right? where you'll have a 1-bedroom apartment or a 2-bedroom apartment, and you'll have roommate situations or people living with each other in maybe housing that is owned or controlled by a provider agency, such as a supported living agency or an independent living agency. And, you know, oftentimes that works. It's usually a part of people's transition time, you know, when they're initially, you know, in a transition program after high school, because sometimes people will have access to that option. Another thing is just being a roommate with a friend or maybe even a stranger that you find in a rental ad on Craigslist. And the thing that I want to say about these shared housing and roommate situations, right, is that among all of the housing types that I see, those are the most unstable because, you know, personalities get involved, and it's really, it can be really weird. It usually starts out okay and everyone has high hopes, but they don't usually last that long. And then where are people going to move? They move back with parents, or if they can't do that, then it becomes a crisis situation of housing. And for what I see in my community, homelessness. Also, people can live in group homes or other licensed care settings. There aren't that many anymore. They're kind of like a diminishing or dwindling sort of resource in the community. And for people who have lived independently before, it's not usually something people consider, but there aren't that many openings anyway, like just available to regular people. So it's, even though it's there, it's not a real resource in my experience. But the thing that we do focus on is this last item here. And this is using a federal, state, or local rent subsidy, right? And the rent subsidy pays that gap between what you can afford and what the rent is. And this is a Section 8 voucher or other kind of affordable housing. So the below programs are just kind of a smattering of some of the programs that are available to our folks. They've been around since the 1960s. I mean, they've been around for 50 years. So if you can target people's access to these specific kinds of subsidies, it pays the rent gap, and there's a bunch of resources. You know, people have been building affordable housing projects for 50 years. They're out there, but how do you access them? Where do they exist? How do you get on the list? What is the, you know, requirements? What kind of documentation needs to be in place? So the first is Section 8.
Sorry, Michelle, your 20 minutes are up. No, it goes by quickly. So we're going to send this out, and I know people are going to have questions. So I'm going to pause you there, and I'll let Amanda come in, and then we'll see how we're doing on time. But we will be sending out all the resources, and Shella compiled a list of resources for Riverside and San Bernardino County. We translated it in Spanish as well, and we'll be sending that out. So I'm going to invite Amanda. Miss Amanda, thank you, Shella. I know it goes by very
Sorry about that.
No problem.
All right.
Hi, everybody. My name is McGuire, and I am the Program Manager for Resource Development and Transportation at Inland Regional Center. Formerly CPP and Affordable Housing Specialist, formerly a vendor all over the place. Before I share my screen, I am going to turn my camera off, and the only reason for that is my internet's a little slow. So if I try to do both, it might cut out on my voice. Okay. Okay. So again, I apologize, it's a little bit slow, but I'll get through it for you. All right, so today I'm going to efficiently as I can, go over the housing options, IRC funds, some current projects, some information on HCBS and housing, what to expect from your CSC, how can you help, and some resources. And then of course, I'm gonna provide this to Beth so everyone has a copy. So as Shella kind of started the discussion, what most of you are used to with your housing options are your typical residential facilities, your group homes for children, small family homes, where the owner is also living there with them, ICF, adult residential homes, specialized, and then residential facilities for the elderly. All of these have different levels and to go from 2 to 4I and vary based on the needs of the home. They're all very much considered facility. And then we have a step up from the specialized residential, which is our newest kind of residential facility, which is an enhanced behavioral support home, which I know Yvonne will discuss a little further, so I'm not going to spend too much time there. And then lastly, what my focus on today is going to be affordable housing and some independent living options. So with your independent living options, we have both the HUD 811 service or your housing authority vouchers, and then affordable housing units. So first, the HUD 811 voucher program. So for both San Bernardino and Riverside counties, there are a certain number of housing vouchers that are given by the state for each county. I believe most recently, San Bernardino County was only given, I want to say 700 maybe. And in the past, these used to be designated specifically to those apartment complexes that were considered affordable housing. And so they were low income, but now this is for any apartment where the property manager is willing to take the voucher. It's not just designated affordable housing complexes. They also provide deposit assistance for move-in. But one thing to keep in mind with this option is that there tends to be very long waiting lists because it's the community at large seeking affordable housing. In fact, San Bernardino County currently has a list of over 10,000 families waiting for a voucher. IRC, we have partnerships with both housing authorities in San Bernardino and Riverside. And as formerly the housing specialist, and currently until I find someone to replace me, I sit on a task force for each housing authority with other referral agencies, including IHP, to talk about possible options that we have and discuss referrals and just the different things that the counties have as resources. In addition, we also have a current property in Desert Hot Springs. It's a senior apartment complex. So while the HUD application does not necessarily make anybody ineligible if they're not a senior, we don't necessarily recommend that our younger folks would want to live there because they want to be more integrated with their own age group. However, if that's their interest, they're welcome to apply. It does require both a HUD 811 application, which is approved by both DDS and the Housing Authority, just to verify income and that they are an IRC client and are eligible. And then it also, after that's approved, requires property manager approval as well, as they have their own eligibility. Okay, and then the big one, multifamily housing. These are affordable housing apartments that are based on low income eligibility. They're open to the community at large. with select units for IRC consumers. And the way this works is IRC partners with a housing developer who, in certain areas of the Inland Empire, is developing affordable housing units for the community, most recently in Coachella, which I'll get into a little further. And they're able to do so with both a federal and a state tax credit that ensures the affordability of the apartments for 55 years. So where do we come in? Well, we then partner with DDS and request CRDP funds, which is Community Resource Development Plan funds, to support the development of the project, which is approximately 25% of the construction cost of the allocated units. This also ensures that the selected units are restricted to IRC consumers for 55 years. Excuse me. So the reason that there are only selected units is with the federal and state tax credit, that comes with restrictions on the percentage of different populations that they're allowed to rent to. So for us, in our most recent one, which had 105 units, we were allocated 10 of those units. The beauty of these apartments is not only are they integrated, but they're also eligible for not only our adult independent consumers, but as well as our dependent adult consumers and their families and our children, as long as it's the primary residence for the individual receiving services. For these particular units, we were able to negotiate that the adjusted median income of our individuals is anywhere from 30 to 50% in the county that it's developed. And again, there's further eligibility criteria beyond income that's provided by property management. So here is what our newest project. On the right side is the draft picture of what it would look like. And on the left was right before it was completed with construction. And it does have solar energy, which is beautiful, covered parking, and the units are beautiful. For Coachella Valley, it's really nice to drive up to because it's kind of this big, beautiful new structure that does not look like our typical older style affordable housing. We also have another one that we're working with Chelsea Development Group called Tripoli that's actually going to be right down the street from this one in Coachella that will break ground later this year and hopefully be done 2023, 2024. Okay, so the reason I bring up home and community-based services is for those that are not clear on this, Regional Center receives funding from both the state and federal through Medicaid. With HCBS, there is a final rule that provided some guidelines that we have to follow in order to continue to receive the federal dollars. And this affects us in the housing side of things because the guidelines want our individuals to be more independent, more integrated, and more part of the community at large. So this meant that our residential facilities needed to be more home-like, individualized with no more shared bedrooms and things like that. But it also means that all of our housing options, such as our affordable housing complexes, have to be integrated with our IRC individuals as well as the community at large. So your CSCs. CSCs are typically responsible to provide referrals and options for housing based on what is agreed upon at the ID team meeting with everyone involved with that person. And there should be an IPP objective to help move toward that goal. Now, what you need to know is with affordable housing being very new for us at IRC, having only just started our project and getting it up and running. And we're now have all the units filled as of May, so only a month ago. A lot of our CSCs are still learning. We are growing every day with both consumers. We're at almost 42,000 now and over 800 employees. And so it's taking time to train all of these individuals, all of our CSCs on affordable housing, the process, what the options are. And it also is hard because we don't have more than one project yet. We just have the one that is filled. So we're only able to really put people on a waiting list. But in addition to that, your CSC should also be providing referrals for support services for independent living, whether that's SLS, supported living services, independent living services, crisis services, behavior management services. All of those things should be an option based on your individual's needs. So that's something to keep in mind. So how can you help? Well, of course, always be the advocate for your individual with your CSC. This is what you want for them. You know them best. So it's important that you continue to advocate. And, if you have a difficult time getting a hold of your CSC, always feel free to reach out to the duty officer, to ask for a manager to get that support that you need. With affordable housing, you can contact, if you want it in your area, some of the options for you is to contact your local development or planning office and request information. It's public. They can give you information on current grant opportunities, things that they might have in the works for future developments. One of the things about that is our governor has put a big push on affordable housing across the board for the state. And so there may be opportunities out there that we don't know about. And I'm only one person doing housing for the entire regional center. So, feel free to support and seek out some information. And then if you know a housing developer in your area, you can Google for housing developers in your area, express your interest, get them on a task force, talk about what you want to do. And if you don't know a housing developer, but you want to start a task force and you do have information from your development office, or maybe you know somebody with an apartment complex, maybe you have connections out in the community, connect with us. That's our affordable housing email. Right now it's just me answering it, but I'm happy to connect you with people and discuss questions you may have, provide any further information and that kind of thing. Okay, so some resources for you. Of course, once again, our email address, we have our IRC website. We always post any updates we have with development needs and that kind of thing on our service provider page. You can also search our service provider page for housing in your area. We have a search portal there for you. I have DDS's website there, as well as both San Bernardino and Riverside County housing authorities. And that's all I have. Tried to be quick. Hopefully I wasn't too fast.
Oh, that was great, Amanda. And I know people are appreciating that we'll be sending out your presentation tomorrow as well. So that was lots of great information. So thank you.
Absolutely.
I know we've got lots of questions, but let's let Yvonne and Vicky hop on. And afterwards, if you guys are super nice, we'll make sure we send all the information. I just got a message that the San Bernardino County Housing Authority Section 8 waitlist is open right now, only until June 30th, until 4 p.m. So if you're in San Bernardino County, I know Riverside was open, but if you want to sign up for Section 8, this is the time to do it now. Shella, let me send this link out to everybody. And I believe we have our social media as well. So I am going to invite Vicky and Yvonne to turn on their cameras. I don't know about Riverside County Section 8. It was last week. I don't know, Shella, can you take a second and check it out while we get Vicky and Yvonne set up? And we will find out. Lots of great questions so far. Did we lose Yvonne? Let me double check.
And I'm gonna share my screen, Beth, for Yvonne to go through her PowerPoint. So just let me know, Yvonne, when you're ready.
Okay, let me get Yvonne's camera back up. There we go. All right, Yvonne, I just sent you a message to start your video. So if you click it, it should start your video. There you go. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, my name is Yvonne Christian Tucker. I'm with the Department of Developmental Services, the Office of Community Development. And I am one of the managers that really helps to keep things rolling with the development of accessible and affordable housing, as well as other new projects that have been available. So if, Amanda, if you could put up the slides, we could get started. Thank you. So I've done this slide, the Office of Community Development. We manage the community placement plan, which Amanda referenced, as well as the community resource development plan for the development specifically for housing and other non-housing resources. And I'll get into a little bit more detail about that. Next slide, please. This is the data that Shella referred to. This is just kind of giving you a pie chart view of the residence types that individuals are residing in. So for example, there's, as Shella mentioned, about 80% of the regional centers consumers, they live in their own homes with their parent or guardian. About 7% live in a community care facility, licensed community care facility, and about 8%, and Shella referenced this as well, live in independent living or supported living services. Then there's, I don't know, maybe 2% or less in each one of these living arrangements, intermediate care facilities, others, which includes things like acute general hospitals, certified foster care systems, and there's also skilled nursing facilities, other secured facilities, and then our developmental center. Next slide, please. The community placement plan gives the regional centers the opportunity to seek DDS approval of an annual community placement plan to develop resources in the community. The idea for these resources is to reduce the reliance on developmental centers, institutions of mental disease, return Californians home who had to be relocated out of state because there was no appropriate residential resource, and avoid individuals from moving into restrictive living arrangements. So we're really working to increase community capacity to make it possible for individuals with developmental disabilities to live, work, and recreate in inclusive community settings. And then finally, the CPP plan is to provide a variety of residential options, services, and supports to meet the service needs that have been identified on the individual program plan. Next slide, please. Something new has come about, I'd say, within the last 5 years. Welfare and Institutions Code added CPP fund for the needs of individuals with IDD who live in the community. So it's kind of broadening the scope of who would be able to benefit from resources that are developed using CPP funds, expanding it to individuals who live in the community versus individuals who are in institutions or more restricted settings. And so when DDS determines that sufficient funds have been appropriated and reserved for CPP, DDS has the authorization to allocate remaining CPP funds to regional centers to support the development of proposed CRDP resources. And the guidelines that the DDS must follow is for the use of the funds that require regional centers conduct outreach activities. So in other words, reach out to the community through stakeholder meetings to gather input on the types of services that would be developed and that represent the diversity of regional centers' catchment area to determine local needs and priorities. Next slide, please. This is just displaying the community housing options that are available through the community placement plan and CRDP. Community care facilities, which include foster homes, small family group homes, and adult and elderly residential facilities. Supported living services for individuals to secure their own home or apartment in an unlicensed community setting. ICFs, or also known as intermediate care facilities, provide 24-hour personal care, rehabilitation, developmental services, health services, nursing supervision, and the 3 models of ICFs include habilitative nursing and continuous nursing care. There's also adult family home agencies and family teaching models. So the adult family home agency may operate homes that are owned and operated by two adults to reside with families and share the responsibilities of being part of a family. And then there's the second type of adult family agency home that includes a family teaching model where the approved family home agency allows individuals who reside there, individuals to reside there in residences that are contiguously attached. So an example of that would be like a duplex. And you might have on one side of the duplex the family teaching individuals, which are typically, I think, family members. And on the other side of the duplex are consumers. And so there's usually a door that connects those two home settings. And the whole concept is for people to learn to be more independent, but with some supervision and oversight closely situated to them. Next slide, please. Additional community housing options have more recently come into operation as we closed almost all of the developmental centers. I think we are down to 2 developmental centers at this point. Porterville Developmental Center and Canyon Springs. Those are our state operated facilities. And the purpose of these types of homes are really to be able to accommodate individuals who might have very intense, complex needs, either behaviorally or medically. One of the homes is called a delayed egress with secured perimeters, a secured environment for people who may demonstrate some impulsivity problems as part of a psychiatric condition that they have, and they may pose a risk of harm to themselves or to others. There's the adult residential facility for individuals with special health care needs, and we have now just started designing homes for children with special health care needs. And this is for folks that need 24-hour, 7-day-a-week licensed awake nursing staff. Another home is the Enhanced Behavioral Support Homes, or EBSH homes. And these are services and supports for individuals, adults, or children with challenging behaviors, with licensed staff 24/7. Community crisis homes are similar to that for both adults and children. There's just a limit on the amount of time that individuals could be in a community crisis home. The idea is for folks to stabilize over an 18-month period and then transition to a less restrictive home. And then there's an acute crisis homes, stabilization, training assistance, and reintegration homes, the STAR homes. They are also state operated homes. So the concept there also, these are small family homes with licensed staff that are providing mental health and behavioral treatment in a home-like environment. Next slide, please. So the community placement plan, community resource development plan, again, provides CPP funding with the following priorities to be used for use by the funds: the safety net and crisis and supportive services, specialized services for individuals with challenging service needs, community living options for consumers residing in acute crisis facilities, safety net facilities, out-of-state and crisis services, community housing options like the EBSH and CCH home and transition homes that I just described. Homes that reflect current and emerging community needs identified by the regional centers and stakeholders in the community. I think one type of new homes that are being now discussed is the development of homes to serve the deaf community. And then homes that are developed that demonstrate compliance with the federal home and community-based services final rule. And I don't know, maybe Vicki is going to get a little bit into that. Next slide, please. So the START homes are stabilization, training, assistance, and reintegration homes. They're state-operated acute crisis homes that provide short-term crisis stabilization, individualized person-centered therapeutic trauma, informed supports, homes for individuals with developmental disabilities who are transitioning from developmental services to the community, and safety net services for individuals with IDD who are at imminent risk of losing his or her current home or residing in a highly restricted placement such as an institution of mental disease, psychiatric hospital, or having to be relocated out of state. Next slide, please. Let's see. GAP funding is available for the development of multifamily housing. And we're new at development of multifamily housing, but it's rapidly growing. The funds are available again through the community placement CRDP plan. And the allowable uses of the funds are for pre-development, acquisition, which allows up to 20 or 25% down payment on a home, renovation, and new construction. Next slide, please. The requirement to participate is that the units are restricted for 55 years for use by individuals with IDD. There are some loan documents that secure state funds like a DDS, deed of trust, or a DDS and a DDS restrictive covenant. That covenant then restricts the use of the property for only individuals with developmental disabilities that receive regional center services. And the project design integrates individuals with into DDS units. Next slide, please. How can you participate, or how do you participate in the development of multifamily housing? You might know someone or have a multifamily project that is ready for development. Collaborate with the local regional center near the project. Develop a plan with the regional center for possible CPP funding approval. And you can contact the Office of Community Development and speak to Jim Morgan, who is our house expert on multifamily housing. He loves to speak with folks about how we can expand multifamily housing. Both the CPP and multifamily housing projects are developed under what we call a buy-at-once model. Not all CPP homes are done under a buy-at-once model, but many of the ones that I just spoke to you about, they do, which means that there's a separation between the ownership of the home and the service provision. There's about 450 single family homes and multifamily units operating under the buy-at-once model. And DDS collaborates with state agencies to administer federal project-based rental assistance programs in California. Amanda talked to you a little bit about the HUD 811 program. The department is a partner in that. It's a 5 state agency managed and administered program, and DDS is one of the state agencies that participates. Next slide, please. This is a photo of the Coachella project. I believe Amanda spoke a little bit about this. It's fairly new multifamily housing development. There's a newspaper article at that link that really describes the development of the project. Next slide, please. And this is how you could get in touch with Jim Morgan to talk about multifamily housing. Next slide, please. These next series of slides are really photos of some of the homes that have been developed under the buy-at-once model. And so this is the bedroom of an RFISHN, the adult residential facility for persons with special healthcare needs. You might be able to recognize the tracking machine that's just below the ceiling. These homes are designed to be really person-centered plans. So everything that goes into the home takes into account the individuals who are actually going to move into the home. And they are designed to really fit into the community. Next slide, please. This is a specialized residential facility bedroom. Next slide, please. This is the kitchen of an enhanced behavior support home. The one thing that we really like about the homes that are being developed, the housing development organization who is designing and renovating these homes really want these homes to really look beautiful and look in the same way that their neighbors' homes look, basically, with the exception of making modifications to accommodate the special needs of each individual that move into the home. Next slide, please. This is an example of accessible accommodation of a bathroom where you could actually have someone in a gurney or a wheelchair access this bathroom. Next slide, please. One of the things that we really like about what's considered as the landscaping of the yards to make sure that it accommodates individuals, especially young adults or children, accommodates physical activities or sports or something fun to do on the property. And this is an enhanced behavior support home backyard. You could golf, you could play basketball, you could swing there, or you could just sit around the table and chat with your family or friends. Next slide, please. And this is a community crisis home for children. Next slide, please. This information is to share what you could do as a stakeholder to be involved, to really identify what would be the needs for your community, your family member that receives regional center services. You could definitely provide input to your local regional center on the needs and priorities for the use of CPP or CRDP funds. You can expand partnerships with people that you know in the community to leverage existing funding that we consider gap fundings in multifamily affordable housing. You can collaborate with housing developers to assist in designing, giving input to you around designing housing with accessibility features. You can assist by attending local government planning department meetings to identify key community housing availability and accessibility concerns related to individuals with IDD and brainstorm solutions. And you can ensure the housing needs for individuals with IDD are represented in your local housing element. And if you're not familiar with a housing element, every state jurisdiction is required to develop an 8-year local plan that's adopted by local government that includes the goals, the policies, the programs, and direct decisions making about housing, including the needs of housing for individuals with IDD. The assessment includes an analysis of demographic, employment, and housing needs and conditions that affect the land use in your community.
Hey, Yvonne, sorry to cut you off, but I know we want to, I know the time goes by quickly, I know.
Okay, I'm glad you are monitoring time.
I am, I'm a strict timekeeper today, so.
Yes, okay.
And
that's my last slide, my last sentence, so I think I made it just on.
And I'm gonna acknowledge that we have more questions than we have time. We want to give Vicki some time. So if we don't answer it tonight, we're going to compile and we'll send out a FAQ for everyone. So Vicki, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, just really quick, because I think the questions are almost more important than probably what I'm going to say is, I also, and I want to thank you, Juan and Amanda and Shella for presenting. And I also want to recognize Beth and her group for putting this on, because I think it's just a really important topic. And also realize that there are some folks here that actually are on this call that are not served even through the regional center system, and maybe having questions about, is this all available to me? And some of it is available, but some things I think cross categories, whether you're served by the regional center or not. And the one thing in working with families over the years, from my perspective, is it's never too early to start. It's never too early to start thinking about housing, and it's never too early to start planning about housing. But if you start planning when you're in the middle of a crisis, what you end up with is a plan to address the crisis, and not the plan to actually address the living and the everyday of what you need for housing. And there's a lot of resources out there of whether you're with the regional center or not with the regional center. PACER has some information out there that talks about things to think about based on where you're going to live when you're in the transition age, because I see some people throwing in the chat about having really young ones, and through the transition age, how important it is to start establishing credit and how you do that, and being able to put names of your kids on some of the utility bills to establish those kinds of credit. Regardless of where you're going to move, right? Because the plan may take you in a different direction, but there's no harm in establishing the credit to begin with. So really thinking ahead, it's never too early. Don't do it when you're in a crisis, or you end up with a crisis-driven plan. And here's the big one. And it's something all of our parents went through too. Leave room for potential failure. We all didn't end up staying in our very first place that we moved out to. None of us wanted to move into something that we consider the most restrictive setting. We all wanted the least restrictive setting where we had the most amount of freedoms. And for our kids with special needs, we just need to think about what that is and matching up the resources and supports that they need to be there. And sometimes I think we start with the more restrictive settings and try to work our way down instead of starting with the least restrictive and potentially putting more supports in, or finding that that's not going to work and we need to look at other settings. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. Whether someone has a Social Security benefits, whether it's SSDI or SSI benefits, there's ways that you can do through transition age to do lease agreements, even when you're living in the parental home still, to get a higher payment rate so that moving out can be a little bit easier. There's also resources like CalAble accounts, and all of those things are topics that we probably don't even have time to get into in great detail. But I just wanted to say that start your planning, and when you think from the parent or the family perspective, what you think you might need, then start involving other people, right? And having that person-centered approach, because our take on our kids is very different than what their friends take or the aunts take, right? And uncles take. And they may see things that we don't see, especially at the time that we're really saying, isn't it time for you to move out? Because all of our parents have been there too. So I just wanted to kind of add that in there, that as you start thinking about it, just and be forgiving on yourself. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to say, I've got to get this right. I've got to get this right. There's a group of people that surround you that can help you, or you wouldn't be here tonight. So yeah, thanks, Beth, for letting me just chime in for a couple of seconds there.
No, I really appreciate that, Vicki. And I'm going to commit, we're going to do a part 2 of housing next month. So we can kind of dig into some of these questions, because they're, as you were saying, Vicki, everybody has their own circumstance. So we have one who, a parent wants to leave their home to their disabled child to live in and wants to know what services are provided by Regional Center to meet that goal. Would Regional Center provide 24-hour care? We have another question. It was a family with a child with autism. They're on Section 8, but they need help finding additional. And is that a service that Regional Center would help with? So I think there's still a lot of confusion. And Amanda, I know you're a department of one, right? What are the specific services that a Regional Center caseworker can help a family around the issue of housing, whether it's with an adult or a child? What does that look like?
Well, there's, realistically, ideally are different. Ideally, we would love to cover every service needed. There are gaps in the system, and there are services that IRC may not have options for, have vendors for, but it's our job to find out what that is. And Yvonne kind of touched on that a bit with, us needing to do that survey to find out what the needs are and developing that. And that's part of the CPP process, is figuring out where are we not meeting the needs of our individuals. That being said, is if your CSC is doing their job, they're having those meetings with you and they're discussing, what is it that you have that you plan for them, and all of the things that that individual needs to support them. So we have, supported living services, we have independent living services, we have crisis management, we have behavioral services. We have those supports that can be utilized in different ways to help with that individual, to support them in their housing. It's just a matter of having that conversation. And if your CSC doesn't know, then that CSC needs to, reach out to me, reach out to other people, and IRC, reach out to DDS, and we can work as a team to make it happen.
That's great. I mean, I love the model of the housing navigation services that Chance has over at Tri-Counties, and we cover, as you said, a much larger area, and where's the help with finding that. And this is absolutely a case where it takes a village. I know if you have IHP or Molina health insurance, they are part of the Cal AIM project, pilot project, and one of the services they can offer if you are homeless or in danger of being homeless, like within the next 60 days, and have a chronic condition, they offer housing navigation, first and last month, and utilities. Now, saying that, it's a new service, and we've also sent some families over there knowing that it's not perfect. They're still struggling finding affordable housing for individuals that are low income. So there's a lot of resources that are just starting to happen, and it's great to work together collaboratively to, put those resources together and help families. I'm looking what else. And Vicki, as you said, we have, regional center and non-regional center families. And what do we do with the non-regional center families? How do we help educate them on what the services are? Cal Able. Okay, so Shella mentioned Cal Able is not a resource for housing purposes. So Shella, you might want to jump on, and that means that they don't count Cal Able funds when they're looking at your income. Is that correct?
Hi, Beth. Yeah, we work with the housing authorities incredibly closely, and HUD has issued a huge public notice about the treatment of Cal Able accounts, and they are not a resource for housing purposes, for affordable housing purposes, not for eligibility. So it's very, very specific. And maybe when we do the follow-up, we can include the link to that public housing notice so that people can print that out and have it in their back pocket, and it will never be an issue again.
Thank you.
So can I clarify that just 1 second? Because people may be hearing it reverse of what Shella, I think, is meaning. Because oftentimes in our circle, we hear resources, oh, that's something I can use. And I think, Shella, what you're referring to is that the housing departments don't see the money that you put in Cal Able as something that will count against your ability to qualify for housing assistance.
That's exactly what I mean, Vicki. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was good. So why don't we will work on a part 2 for next month, and let's dive into the weeds a little bit. We'll give some very specific examples, and we'll walk through the process of what some of the resources could be, and just kind of brainstorm whether it's regional center or non-regional center client. And we'll schedule that next month. So deal? And in the meantime, if you guys have any other questions regarding housing, you can email info, and I'll put it in the chat, info@ieautism.org, and we will put all that together. And I appreciate, thank you to all of our fabulous speakers tonight. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for our poor people who are trying to access the ASL interpreter, and took us almost an hour to figure that out. Thank you for that patience. Thank you for Gilbert, our fabulous Spanish interpreter. Appreciate him as well. So we will see you next month. Thank you all for attending, and we'll continue this conversation next month. So be safe out there, take care, and thanks to all of our speakers again for your time and expertise. And we will be sharing all your information tomorrow. So have a good evening, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.